Gonna get started. Welcome, welcome. I'm gonna ask our speakers to come up.
I feel so much better now. I feel safe.
I love it.
All right, everybody. Juan, you can join us here. All right, everybody, we're gonna get started. Sorry, that's the Jersey in me. I just had to forget the mic. Welcome, everyone. I am Ana Baptista. I'm the director for the Tishman Center, and we're going to begin with an offering, a land acknowledgement poem from K.D. Chavez, who's the executive director of the Climate Justice Alliance. So I'm going to ask K.D. to come up.
Hello, everybody. I'm very honored to share this poem. I wrote this while I was out at Standing Rock, and the context of this is I wrote this poem kind of feeling just the indigenous rage that we feel when sometimes our land is taken advantage of. So I'm offering this today as a land acknowledgement. It's called Burning Man. Oh, you're good. I'm like, I'll do it to music. Okay, so this is Burning Man. You treated my land like Burning Man. Came with your poison to vacation, left with our medicine, left your trash for others to clean up your mess. You treated my land like Burning Man. You broke protocol, dug in your hooks to build ivory towers from my bones, took advantage of my hospitality by colonizing my sacred space, built your institutions, nurtured them into industrial complexes in an effort to make us industrious, push our bodies into dissolution, dirt, death. Stole our children, ripped the justice from our wombs, forced your patriarchy around our throats, but wild tongues cannot be tamed, only cut out, and your violence cannot be tamed. It can only be cut out, so cut it out. Decolonization is not a metaphor, and my existence is not imaginary, so don't paint it on your face or tattoo tribal on your body as you smudge away my ancestors, haunting you as you stand on stolen ground. As you try to drown me in my blood, bury my heart at Wounded Knee, as I am redesigning my DNA, pulling my friends out of rivers as relatives drowning in their own tears struggle to stay afloat while shackles pull them out to sea. Into new hands, promised lands, promises broken as we reach into ourselves and regurgitate our history onto bleached out textbooks, school to prison pipeline, poverty, art, prose, culture to contemporary, Western masterpiece to native folk art. Creative types go to Burning Man to learn about destruction. Pay to do what has been done to us by the very institutions that bury us, burn us, destroy us. You treated my land like Burning Man, but we don't. Bringing something into existence to destroy is not our way.
All right, thank you, KD, for grounding us in this space and opening us up. I also want to call attention to a a booklet, a binder we have that we're going to pass around. It is a public history project that was done with the Ramapo and Munsee Lenape leaders as part of the public history project, and it details the Lenape-Munsee history of this region and talks about the 600 years also of extraction and dispossession and erasure, and also the effects of slavery on many of the dispossession processes in our bioregion. So please, I encourage you to take a look and review the maps and the histories there. I also want to thank our guests who are live streaming with us and also here in person. I want to thank our amazing partners on this panel, but also on the work that we've been doing together, CJA and CRP. They've been amazing partners with us. And I see a lot of members, a lot of friends and family. This is an amazing way to round out what has been a very frantic week of events and networks, and this is family, familia. We're coming home. These are the homies. We are going to have an amazing discussion today in family and community here. So I'm very honored to be able to help host this. And I also want to recognize all the tireless labor that goes into doing events like this, from all of our partners, from our staff at the Tishman Center, from CJA staff, NCRP staff. There's so much care and invisible labor that goes into these events before, after, during, and I just want to honor that labor and all that work, and really give those folks the love and the shine that they really deserve, because none of us would be able to do this without all that effort putting on events all week. So thank you. First, let's thank them. Some of you raise your hands, camera, Mike, all of our folks. Okay, and there are also, I'm supposed to put in a plug for all the resources. When you came in, you might have seen a QR link, the investment report. We're going to tell you more about that during the presentation, but I want to make sure that you have a chance to look at that. And I'm just going to ground us in a little bit of history, because the Tishman Center, we have a long history with working with CJA. Back in 2015, I had just started at the new school. I was like a little baby academic, kind of accidentally ended up here, was like not sure what I was supposed to be doing. And Michelle DePaz, who was our director at the time, gave me a little grant, and she said, well, who do you want to partner with and work with? And I reached out to Michael Guerrero, who was the head of CJA at the time, and I said, would it be helpful to do like a little report or anything to really uplift and amplify the work that you all are doing? And he said, yeah, we just started this Our Power Communities campaign, and I spent the next couple of months working with Yuki and Michael, working on a report about the amazing work that those Our Power communities were lifting up and doing, and you probably could find that report in the archives somewhere. But we continued that legacy. We worked with the B back in 2018, their members in the Gulf South and the Midwest, doing research that lifted up not just the under-resourcing of grassroots movement partners in those two regions, but also, more importantly, to talk about the opportunity costs. What was lost when that under-resourcing happened? The tremendous potential and power of the groups that were doing work in those two regions that were really being looked over. And those were the real grassroots solutions that, so a lot of people from that report took the 1%, and only 1% of funding goes to grassroots groups. But even more important in that report was all the stories of the impact that those groups were having in those regions where supposedly all the climate funding was going. So this panel is very much along the lines of that trajectory. We've heard all about how philanthropy and funding doesn't get to our communities. This panel is grassroots power. Grassroots power, yes. It's to remind everyone and to lift up the fact that there is tremendous power and impact and scale that is happening in our communities every day. And it's their loss, really, really overlooking that work. And it's time. The time is now to start really investing. It's more important now, more than ever, to put your money where your mouth is, right? So in the Just Returns report, you're going to hear about the Just Returns report, which the panelists will talk about, so I'm not going to say too much about it, other than you're going to check it out. You're going to check out the report. It's released. And I'm going to introduce Matteo Noob, who's graciously agreed to be our moderator. He's the national co-chair of the Climate Justice Alliance Board. He's a co-founder and co-director of the Movement Generation Justice and Ecology Project. He's also the co-chair of the Justice Funders Board of Directors and a board member for Grassroots International. He was born and grew up in La Paz, and since moving to San Francisco, he's worked in labor, EJ, you all know him. So he's also, I found this out, a member of the Latin rock band Los Nadis, and I went online, I was jamming out. Los Nadis, we have to put it up and circulate that. So he's gonna be our moderator today. Thank you, Matteo. Take it away.
Great. Thank you. Familia, I'm so happy to be here with you all tonight. It is really special, and thank you, Anna, and to everybody at Tishman for being in this long-standing partnership. I'm very honored to be sharing this space with four amazing folk. We are here to discuss and analyze and visibilize the impact, the scale, and the key contributions of frontline community initiatives that address the ecological and climate crises playing out all around us. In doing so, it is necessary for us to be precise about how we talk about and define scale and impact. A useful starting point is to remind ourselves that the scale of the problem does not dictate the scale of the solution. Furthermore, the way you define the problem often ends up being the problem. The climate crisis, for example, is a symptom of a much deeper problem. If your discussion begins and ends with parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, you end up breeding what can be termed carbon fundamentalism, which in turn leads to a fetish for mega-sized techno-fixes, many of which are often imbued with mystical and magical and speculative powers of sudden transformation. If instead your discussion and analytical rigor begins with a structural and historical understanding of extraction and the enclosure of resources, wealth, and power, well, then you appreciate that the through line to this problem roots itself in what is arguably the largest singular act of ecocide committed by a group of humans in our history. A transatlantic slave trade, a massive act of massive act of theft of both land and labor, which in turn led to colossal disruption and terraforming of ecosystems on 3 continents at once. Climate change and the climate crisis is a direct descendant of that disruption. In other words, the climate crisis is not a technological problem. It's a justice problem. It's a power and control problem. It is an enclosure problem. It is in that context that when we arrive on our approach to the concept of scale, which our panelists will directly address tonight, the analytical clarity of frontline and directly impacted communities is place-based. It's eco-literate. It is in direct communication with the totality of the life support systems that foster health and well-being in their communities. Be these their watersheds, their food sheds, their energy sheds, their trade sheds, their land and resource sheds. Frontline communities seek to build scale not by creating larger and larger organizations and entities with greater and greater concentrated power, but by aggregating to scale, by uniting and strategically aligning across places, rather than creating one big, clumsy, one-size-fits-all solution. Frontline communities are amassing a weighty yet nimble bag of marvels, I'm sorry, a weighty yet nimble bag of place-based solutions. I got ahead of myself with my metaphor, but I'm getting there. Think of it as a deft and dexterous bag of marbles. There we go. Versus a blundering bowling ball. A marbles approach is not only more effective from a quantitative perspective, which we will hear about, it is also more strategic. It makes it harder to stop or disrupt us, which is it's also an important element of this conversation. If you understand that this is a power and control problem, you also understand that those in power will work hard to resist and deflate community solutions that challenge enclosure and that devolve and democratize power and control back to the people, back to the commons. So enough of my context setting. As I mentioned, we have an amazing crew of panelists tonight. I will let them introduce themselves fully as each of them speak. But we have Dwayne and Juan, who are visionary, storied frontline leaders from Roxbury, Massachusetts and Puerto Rico, respectively, who will both outline how grassroots and community-led solutions are setting the tone and pace from their perspectives and, oh yes, the dangers of technology right in front of you, and how a translocal organizing approach aggregates impact and scale. And Jennifer and Shaheen will lay out an impact analysis from their vantage points as key partners who bring the research and resourcing and academic rigor and methodology into our conversation. So I think there's slides for each of them. I get to click. All right. So in the order that you saw the slides, I'm gonna hand this all-powerful gadget to Juan, and Juan is gonna kick us off by sharing inspiring and visionary organizing that's happening in Puerto Rico. Gracias, compañero, hermano.
You have to use that. You have to use.
Do I? Well, I'm from Puerto Rico, a small island in the Caribbean. We are a colony of the United States. We have been a colony for the last more than 500 years. And our country is a country that was being killed by the problems, and now it's being killed by the solutions. And I think we need to think about that, because I think we are in the verge of repeating this history in terms of getting the false solution, getting in love with the false solution. Our project, we call it the People's Solution. We deal it up with energy, but our organization is not about energy. Our organization, we have an energy problem in Puerto Rico, but our real problem is power. We are powerless. I mean, we are not powerless because we want to be powerless. They don't want us to have power. So they keep on trying to stop us from doing the whole thing. Our project is Amanecer 2025. And I want that, this is Maria in September 2017, entering through Yabucoa. It stayed in the country, in our country, past our country, for about 20 hours. This is I wanted you to see this graph. This is a graph about the excess mortality in relation to income, to economic development. If you look at that graph, you will see easily that it wasn't the storm, it wasn't the hurricane that killed more than 3,000 people. It was inequality that killed the people. When you look at that green line, which is the highest income municipalities, or the violet one, the purple one, middle income municipalities, and you look at the red one, you see how inequality works against the people and kill the people. If you watch from October, after the first month, all of the graph, all of the municipality excess mortality was growing until October. Then after that, people with more money started going down and down until they become almost normal. But in the case of the poor people, they went up and up and up, and suddenly, in December through January, it peaked in January. And we don't have to make a study to find out why. I was there. I was talking with the people in the countryside, and I talked with the elders in the countryside, asking me, Juan, will we ever have electricity again? 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, and year after. In the case of Jayuya and some other municipalities, a year without electricity. And these people started dying, not of the effect of the hurricane, direct effect, but the lack of hope. They lost hope. And you know what the problem is? The problem, no. You got some of there was another one. Okay. This is what we did. This is what we do in our country. This is the people. We do a lot of work with photovoltaic system, but in all our presentations, there are more people than photovoltaic panels. Our project is not about putting a new technology into place. Our project is about bringing people to bring the solution by themselves. I was talking about a saying we have in Amanecer. In Amanecer, the word charity is prohibited. In Amanecer, the word help is prohibited. We don't help anyone, and we don't want any help. We want collaboration, we want partnership, we want people to get together and do the thing together. If the people cannot do the thing, that's the wrong thing. That's the wrong technology. That's the wrong scale. So, no. Okay, there's one missing, but I'll tell you, our systems are so simple that the people can put them themselves, by themselves, mostly with their own money, and they have to be democratically installed. I mean, this is not anyone, no one from outside comes to install the system in the community where we're working. They do the whole thing together. They do a lot of grassroots research about the system. They know the numbers, they know why the system is built like that. Let me tell you, we don't use any lithium batteries. You know why? They are more efficient. They are cheaper in the long run. But I have to talk at least once every 2 years with the people in Bolivia, of Jujuy Valley and Atacama in Chile. And I really feel ashamed when they tell me, Juan, your photovoltaic system are killing our communities. So we don't want that. We don't want to be good while some other in other places is wrong. We don't buy any monocrystalline panels because the pollution they produce kill mostly Chinese and Vietnamese people. We don't want that. We want to be good, but we want other people in other places to be good. And now the problem is that the thing that started in one municipality grew to 2, to 3, to 4, to 5, to 10. Now we are in 14 different municipalities, and we don't have the resources to keep on. We don't want to grow to the whole island. We don't want to be all of us doing the same thing in one place. They will kill us with one bullet. We want to keep ourselves small enough to do the right thing at the right scale, and be part of the community and be part of the solution from the community. So I'm really grateful to be here. I'm grateful that some people from Puerto Rico, Katia, this beautiful Yamal, and la compañera de Fiticas, que se me olvida el nombre porque se me olvida cuando estoy hablando en inglés, María Olga. And then some people in Texas that are supposed to be from University of Rio Grande watching us there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Juan. And thank you for, if I may use the pun, illuminating us through an example that shows what energy democracy looks like. The solution isn't solar. The solution is a democratically run, community-controlled, decentralized, diversified system that is rooted again in place and in right relationship with not only ecosystems and each other. So thank you for bringing us that example or set of examples from Puerto Rico. Dwayne, if I may, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. What's up? It's good being at the new school. I want to do a quick test. How many folks here remember when this was called the New School for Social Research? Because that's what my diploma says. I don't know about this new school, folks, but back in 1996, this institution was called the New School for Social Research. And the student body and the faculty was some of the most radical, progressive folks on this planet. Nothing was left uncrushing. So anything I'm saying today, don't accept it at face value. It should be the beginning of rigorous research and analysis, because the work that we do, hundreds if not thousands, in reality millions, are dependent on us to make this work. The reason why I started off with the New School for Social Research is that less than 30 years ago, this was a common understanding of what this institution used to be. Meaning, historically, we forget very quickly. Very quickly do we forget. Why do I say that? Because organizing is the key component for any movement, organization, whatever you call it. If we can't organize, we fail. Everyone here should be an organizer. I don't care if you ED, I don't care if you in the arts. The essence of what we do, we organize. If we lose organizing, guess what we have? We have these pseudo organizations that in front of corporation and philanthropy, pretending that we are connected to our communities. And this is the state of our movement as we speak. So the power that we have is the power within our neighborhoods. Know your neighbors. Know your stakeholders. That is where the power lies. Power does not lie in a 40-page policy paper, because no one get past the first page anyway. The power is when you can organize 4 of your neighbors to do a letter writing campaign, organize your faith-based organizations to bring politicians to a reality that we are the leaders, we are the bosses, and it's not them. We leave power on the local level. We leave power in our neighborhoods. We leave power within our homes. So the approach of ACE as a constant remember of our ancestors is that we organize locally. I ain't gonna let nothing gas me up, whether the invitation to the White House or universities. My power is when I walk down the street, my community, like, he keeps his word. He could represent us to the place where it could make him uncomfortable so our children will be comfortable. So we're gonna do a little policy, but one of my boys said, power is who you serve. And he's not a real deep dude, but he said it, right? He's not. He said, power is who you serve. And if I serve poor and working class, Black and brown folks, that's where my power is. My power is not in City Hall at the State House. That's just real. It's not there. The power that we have is how we could go out, talk to people, gain a foundation, and force them to come to us. I don't try to court politicians. I court residents. If I'm gonna get punked, it's gonna be a resident to punk me. It's not gonna be a staffer or some low-level state rep that can't even get anything passed. That's not gonna happen. So I'm just gonna give a quick example of an ordinance that we worked within the context of community to pass. It's called Building Emission Reduction Disclosure Ordinance, and it was one of the first. New York has one, Cambridge now has one. It's cutting emissions on the municipal level. And when I say that we leave power on the table, that's the example that I'm going to use. We was able to start a conversation and build an ordinance that basically buildings over 20,000 square feet have to reduce their emissions. We started out with 4 base building organizations. We started out with $20,000. We gave $5,000 to each of those organizations to sit at the table, because our organizations sit at the table for free all the time, right? We was able to have citywide conversations around air quality. And do you know what we realized? Our residents were the experts. I want to sit with that. The residents had more knowledge than anybody else. The so-called experts had to go, and the residents led the process. This is not some romanticism, this whole notion that we speak for ourselves. Our residents was able to speak for themselves. Long story short, we was able to pass it. Offered $20,000 seed money, because I always talk about the actual cost of making things happen. That $20,000 K was basically sacrifice money, meaning our organizations didn't do it because of the resources, but it was hint, hint, let's start off with this resource and how we build it. 3 or 4 years later, we raised over $500,000 to do building emissions work, right? Not tons of money, but we built it and scaled it we was able to build it and scale it. So now, it's Boston. Everything is a little bit more complicated. It's an ordinance. We have a watchdog group with 2/3 of the panel is neighborhood residents. Never in Boston history have we been able to have 2/3 residents. Usually it's dominated 55, 60% city, 40% residents. So that in itself is pretty radical. Recently, CJA did this little tour and we sat down with Senator Markey. As soon as we sat down, they said, yo, we looking at ACE work on building emissions. It's not ACE work, it was the community work. It was New England United for Justice, Chinese Progressive Association, and City Life. It was our partners' work. But they said, well, ACE, but we want to introduce a federal legislation based on this building emission ordinance. Cool, we're in the conversation with them. But the reason why I use that example is because we started locally. We built it up to where now on a federal level, also the state level, folks are paying attention that we have the power to actually alter policy. But it starts with the knowledge of our residents and our communities. So yeah, power is who you serve. Power is what you exercise. After this wave of money and resources that may and most likely leave, we still have power to organize our residents. And the very last thing I would say, I was talking to some folks, is that back in the 80s, the way you did community organizing was that you had another job, or we would say a real job, and you worked that real job, and then you had a community organization that you would go from 5 to 8, 6 to 9, and volunteer your time to organize your community. This is what all of this is built on. people who work real jobs. I'm not saying we have unreal jobs. I'm talking about real jobs in the context, in my neighborhood, blue collar dudes coming in, door knocking at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, making phone calls. It was no money. The ED was probably making 18, 19K a year. So what we do now is based on that sacrifice. And this is a subtle reminder. And as a former student at the New School for Social Research, crushing everything, be rigorous in how you approach this work, because this is the legacy of the New School for Social Research. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. As Dwayne so powerfully put it for us, organizing cools the planet. That's not rhetorical, that's real. The largest social movement in the world, Via Campesina, the International Alliance of Peasant Workers, says small-scale farms cool the planet in their work to challenge industrial agriculture. And I think Dwayne just transposed that into what is, for many of us, our urban terrain of struggle. Organizing allows us to rebuild democracy, which then allows us to make decisions based on right relationship with place. And that is a key pathway towards climate justice and climate solutions. Thank you, Dwayne. Now I'm super excited to turn it over to Jennifer, who's going to share with us what the interplay of academic rigor and the kind of research that is in true relationship with community and organizations yields. So thank you so much, Jennifer. And I think I'll pass you the clicker too, because I think you need it.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Dr. Jennifer Santos Ramirez. I'm the senior researcher here at the Tishman Environment and Design Center. I'm one of those folks who writes the 40-page research paper that no one reads. I promise I won't make you read that tonight. I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version of some of our research. But before I get into that, I just wanted to tell a little bit about myself. I grew up in Hunts Point in the South Bronx, an environmental justice community. That's right, HP. And I've long been frustrated by the narrative that local grassroots organizations aren't impactful or investable. Early in my career, I worked in very well-funded mainstream environmental organizations that focused on broad conservation efforts or advocated for cap and trade, which we know failed at the federal level. And meanwhile, in my community, change was happening and occurring with local groups on the ground organizing to turn unusable hazardous areas into greenways, expand park space, remove polluting facilities, including waste transfer stations, pass rezoning policies to make life in the South Bronx healthier, less polluted. As many people know, it has the highest rates of childhood asthma and emergency hospitalizations for childhood asthma in the country. These underfunded groups continue to fight for a healthier South Bronx. And in my decision to go to graduate school, I'm a first generation college graduate, I decided to pursue a PhD with a desire largely driven by a desire to amplify the voices of those most impacted and their communities and the solutions that they have for their communities. At the Tishman Center, I now collaborate on action-based research with environmental justice groups and intermediaries like Climate Justice Alliance. And a core area of my research has been on the misalignment between philanthropy and environmental justice organizations, particularly on the ways in which philanthropy values and evaluates grassroots solutions and the misalignment in that. Studies show that foundations often take a neoliberal approach to the ways in which they conduct grant making. This approach relies heavily on market-based technocratic solutions, and it focuses on efficiency and quick measurable results, heavy emphasis on carbon emissions reduction, rather than addressing the root causes of climate change. With our research project with the Climate Justice Alliance, I was very interested in how do grassroots organizations articulate and measure impact and scale? What are the ways in which they're tracking progress? And how do they understand and conceptualize scale? So the purpose of the research was to reframe some of these concepts like efficiency, impact, scale, innovation, and risk, right? So that we can break down some of the barriers between how funders are evaluating climate action and really invest in grassroots solutions. There we go. So before we asked about impact, we looked at climate justice member groups, and we really did a deep dive into the projects and programs that they're working on, right? Like what does it mean to be a grassroots group working on a climate justice initiative, right? Sometimes these things seem really abstract, but they're not. CJA member groups are tackling so many diverse issues across multiple sectors. We found groups working to address inadequate food systems, legacy pollution, economic equity, energy transitions, and they were also working on social justice and human rights, community development, and providing critical community services in their community. COVID-19 was an excellent example of the work that community-based organizations were doing rapidly on the ground and in an instant. On average, we did interviews and surveys, and we found that CJA member groups reported working at least across 5 of these priority areas and programs. And I just want to, footnote that with the fact that 95% of our respondents had operating budgets under 5 million. So you imagine that 5 distinct programs, priority areas, working across, integrated in their community, and doing it all under $5 million. Like, if that's not efficiency, I don't know what else is, right? And this work is, this intersectional work can lead to really incredible multi-sector wins. We asked groups to just give us a recent win, right? Like in the last year or so, we got dozens of responses of wins spanning local to regional to federal level. Millions and billions of dollars community groups are bringing into their community to create wonderful projects like climate resiliency hubs, urban farms and gardening. And this is just one example of one of the responses we received. One grassroots group led by women of color leveraged 17 acres of land for an urban farm. They were producing food, creating a farmer cooperative in their community, and they also had a youth leadership component as well. They were teaching people how to grow and how to cook food, right? So when you think about, okay, well, what does that mean for climate action? What does that mean for climate justice? Well, you can see there in this kind of program, when it's integrated into the community and when it has several different elements and levels, what you can see is that it's impacting food systems and addressing food insecurity, right? And food sovereignty. It's bringing the problems of our global food system into local production, right? It's improving economic equity, because when you're allowing folks to sell food, to get food, that's impacting their bottom line, right? Their incomes, and the ways in which that they're drawing an income and wage. It's impacting community development. It's creating sustainable infrastructure, right? So these, and also carbon capture. This is the real carbon capture, right? And it's also addressing social justice and human rights, because again, when you have food insecurity, you can't address other issues for your family in your life, but it's creating leadership development in the community. And it's really, because this is a women-led program, right? It's like, it's bringing in, gender empowerment and women's empowerment. So this kind of work directly addresses a just transition and climate resilience, even if it's not explicitly framed that way. There's no climate written in this description of this win, right? And we found multiple organizations that didn't necessarily say, hey, we're addressing climate change, but they are. And so we have to start thinking differently about what it means to address climate change and to take climate action. I'm gonna leave it at that. I have a lot more, but I'm gonna leave it at that for now. Thank you. I'll pass it to you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I think that this example you just gave us really drives the point home that climate justice is about reclaiming economy on our terms. And economy means literally the management of home. And in this example, what you've gifted us is the understanding that when folks reclaim management of home, we're creating the path forward that allows us to address a multiplicity of needs that includes addressing the climate crisis. Thank you. That was really inspiring and powerful. So now we turn to Shaheen, and we're so fortunate to have so many sister organizations, and the Solutions Project is one of those key organizations that understands that returning capital to the commons is a central part of this equation as well, and has really been working on leveraging that location of organizing and capital. So Shaheen, I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. It's great to be here tonight. So I have the unenviable position of speaking about philanthropy and how we're showing up in this space. But as Mateo mentioned, I'm with the Solutions Project, and we are a nonprofit that accelerates climate action by centering the solutions and voices of frontline communities across the US who are building a world with where everyone has clean air, water, energy, and land. And we do this by resourcing frontline communities with grants and coupling and supercharging that with narrative and communications capacity support to enable and to strengthen the storytelling capabilities of our partners. So our dollars and our resources are invested in BIPOC and women-led groups in the US, understanding that those closest to the problems create the most innovative and durable solutions. As our role as a philanthropic intermediary, we also work to influence philanthropy, as we call status quo philanthropy, to direct more resources towards grassroots movements and to approach impact research and learning with values of solidarity, not charity, as Juan mentioned. And solidarity means showing up in service to people on the ground in right relationship, because these are the communities that are leading transformative change. And so I'm constantly inspired by the innovative solutions of our partners. They are multi-solving and bridging the gaps between climate justice and everyday needs. Our partners are providing healthy foods, creating food sovereignty, by establishing community gardens. They are shutting down polluting industry, transitioning power plants, stewarding the land in rural and urban environments. And through policy change, they are making neighborhoods, cities, states, tribal nations have access to affordable clean energy and Wi-Fi. Just to give you an example of a partner, we fund the New York City Environmental Justice Alliance, which works with grassroots groups across New York City. In 2023, they won a major campaign victory, replacing oil and gas with offshore wind power. At the Ravenswood Generating Station, that's a huge win. This is one of the largest power generators in New York. And by transitioning from fossil fuels, it will become the nation's first 100% clean energy source power plant. That's huge. That was a result of organizers in New York, decades of work. I'll get into the data in a bit, but we looked at an analysis, an impact analysis looking at this win along with 2 other policy wins in New York. And we found that this particular victory will cut nearly 1 million tons of carbon emissions per year. That's about 200,000 cars off the road. It improved health, or will improve health for over 1.2 million people living nearby. It'll give affordable energy for over 2 million homes and provide green new jobs. That's multi-solving. And so this is a powerful example of how when grassroots partners are resourced, they can engage in these multi-dimensional strategies, such as power building, building a base of engaged and activated community members, organizers, grassroots leaders that can then build successful campaigns against polluters. So I will share some, yep, there we go. We actually have data that shows how successful frontline climate leaders have been in advancing climate justice and a just transition when they are resourced with multi-year general operating and other supports. So we recently completed a series of impact assessments across our grantee network, looking back at the last 3 years of a total of $42 million in grant making. We enlisted a long-time evaluation collaborator called Frontline Solutions to build on our annual confidential grantee evaluation of our grant making and narrative communications programs with a 3-year look back at the impact. And we asked our partners how they define impact and what they were able to achieve with our support. We also brought in additional research partners, including physicians, scientists, and engineers, PSE, for Healthy Energy, and the Just Solutions Collective, to go deeper to understand impactful policies at the local, state, and federal levels, resulting from the work of our partners. And the results are striking. Some top-line results: when we look at our grantee portfolio of grantees, we find that in the past 3 years, our partners have implemented direct climate solutions and services to over 1 million people. They've secured more than 50 policy and campaign victories. A deep dive with the Just Solutions Collective into 20 of those policy victories found that those wins impacted 106 million lives. So that means jobs, improved overall health, heat relief, lower rates of deadly diseases, and so on and so forth. We also found that our partners are working as part of a larger effort to influence the flow of US government climate dollars to grassroots communities, winning $69 million in local state funds for climate justice solutions in just the last few years. So we know that resourcing grassroots is making an impact on the ground. And in fact, as I shared earlier, it's making material impact and it's reducing emissions. So our grassroots climate partners are able to reduce emissions. We partnered with the PSC for Healthy Energy Emissions, to conduct a CO2 impact analysis, again, to assess those climate benefits in New York City. And that assessment found that the 3 policy wins in New York, one of which I referenced earlier, found the reduction of 1.15 million metric tons of CO2 emissions per year. So this strikes at the heart of the philanthropic community's misconception that climate justice isn't achieving substantial reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. It is, and it's doing so much more. They're also showing and demonstrating powerful stories of change, showing how their efforts are transforming lives and communities. From documenting emissions to highlighting the improvements in community health and resilience, their impact is multidimensional. And this research shows what's possible when funders properly resource grassroots groups to pursue their community's vision for climate solutions. And that means funding power building work as well. So that's all I'll share for now.
Thank you so much, Shaheen. Thank you for illustrating how with a minuscule amount of the money that is going to climate solutions, community-led organizations have already had tremendous impact. So leaning into imagining what it looks like if we can capture a bigger chunk of that capital really points to the fact that we have so much capacity to really shift reality into a world that we actually need and want. So I have a question that I want to put out for you for any of you that want to jump into it, and I'm going to share an example that speaks to this question as a way to jolt the many examples that are floating around in the work that many of us do. So the question is, what opportunities do you see in the current moment to deepen impact or aggregate scale to continue building the ambitious possibilities that we need to accomplish. And the example I want to give is I live in unceded Ohlone land in what is also known as the San Francisco Bay Area. So I want to give you a story, or an example rather, from California, which I find tremendously inspiring. And again, I ask you to remember that the Climate Justice Alliance alone is 100+ organizations. So I'm going to tell you a story, and if we multiply that across 1,000 places, that's how we get to aggregation of scale. So north of where I live, about 60, 90 miles north, is wine country, or what we are told is wine country. And there's an organization there called North Bay Jobs with Justice. And amongst other things, they organize folks who work in the grape fields. And when many of us were being told, when massive fires started really popping up every year, about 6 years ago, when we were being told stay inside, grape workers were forced to go out and pick those grapes under dire conditions. And these are workers who many come from Oaxaca, from Chiapas, who've worked the land and have a sacred relationship with land already, who come from families who are still doing that. And their understanding was like, this industry is killing this land, quite literally. And now they're killing us in the process of killing the land. We need to end this. And what have they done? They have now created their own self-directed workforce to actually, they call it las trabajadoras de la tierra, the workers of the land. They understand that actually fire and the relationship with fire is a millennial tradition in so many indigenous communities where fire is part of our reality. They said, we also understand that there's hundreds of millions of dollars coming into climate adaptation and mitigation. They said, let us seize control of this world of tending the land through weeding, through thinning forest, through leading fires. And they have now built a workforce that is now almost 100 strong, where they are getting the local county contracts and private contracts to thin land, as in areas that are too densely forested, which leads to some of the mega fires, and to do controlled burns. But they don't stop there. They understand what we need to build is a workforce of 20,000, 50,000 workers like us in Northern California and Oregon and Washington, and are reaching out to sister organizations across what is Salmon Nation or Fire Nation. And that gives us an example of what aggregating to scale looks like. That's an example of what reclaiming economy looks like. Understanding that when fancy folk talk about climate adaptation and climate mitigation, they're talking about we're about to create these spigots of billions of dollars, and usually it's powerful folk who figure out how to speculate off of this money, right? And instead workers are saying we're gonna figure it out on terms that are in right relationship with land and right relationship with our labor. So with that example, I want to turn to the four of you, and I would love to hear from any of you what you see as the key opportunities to aggregate scale, to deepen impact, the challenges that we need to step to as organized social movements, as organized neighborhoods, as organized communities, to ensure that climate justice is the terrain that we're working on. And if I may start, I actually would love to hear, Juan, you gave us an example around energy democracy. I would love to hear how you interpret this expression of energy democracy playing out in many places at once.
Okay, I was waking this morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:50 in the morning, by a local radio station in Puerto Rico, because there was going to be today a hearing in the Congress of the United States to talk about the monies that have been allocated to rebuild the energy system, which are not being used in the right way. The thing is not moving at all. We are talking about $21 billion of monies that are basically laying there without being used in the right way. That's not the bigger problem, that the money is there. Not only like 5% of the project have been finished, The thing is that all the money is going in the wrong way. All the money is going to rebuild the system in a way that will perpetuate fossil fuel use for a private company that now runs the whole utility. And it's incredible. We haven't been able to get to a scale big enough to make a dent in the sense that we have a model in which if we use 1/20th of that, we could give energy security. People will get by themselves energy security to all the people that lost their electricity in Hurricane Maria. And you know what the problem is? We got in 2017, the whole island in the biggest blackout of US history, the biggest blackout of US history, the second biggest blackout in the whole planet history. And then in the 2021, we have the most active hurricane season. And then in 2022, we have a hurricane that never landed in our country. And for the next days, we have 1 million people without electricity. And 1 month ago, there was another hurricane, Ernesto. It didn't land in the country either, and we have more than 1 million people with it. And you know something? Next hurricane will kill thousands of people because the monies are being used in the wrong way. And we need to have a chance to take our message to the municipalities. We don't think we can do that at the national level. You know why? They won't hear. They are too invested in the privatization and the whole thing. I think we have a way to deal with that, but I'm afraid that the next hurricane will set us back to the 40s again, and thousands of people will die. And I mean, our poor people cannot wait for the energy transition. This is it is a big thing. One of the things we need to change is this narrative about energy transition. That's bullshit. I mean, people are waiting for someone to come in and do the thing for them. That won't happen. And I'm not against, I'm not against the energy transition. I know we need to go there. But until we get there, our people should not be menaced by dying because they don't have any electricity. The best gift that I have whenever there is a blackout in Puerto Rico is that our chat in Amanecer, it's filled with the same phrase, I got power. When everybody is in a blackout, I got power.
What's up? So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Inflation Reduction Act. So $600 million has dropped on our frontline communities. The math is $50 million per region times 12, 600. The breakdown is 120 million is admin, and it's 40 times 12. It's like $480 million that will be directed to community-based organizations, right? This is EPA. It's complicated. It's bureaucratic. And that's not an excuse not to engage, right? So ACE, because of the Tishman Center, the EJ Fellowship, 2 years ago, the Community First Foundation came to us and talked to us about all of this money coming down. It was so much money that people couldn't believe it. When they was talking about it, they was talking in trillions of dollars. And you could tell that we was just, what you mean, trillions of dollars? Yeah, $4.6 trillion Inflation Reduction Act. So this is the breakdown for us. 600 million strengthening communities, grant maker grant, 1.9 billion for the community change grant. So that's 2.5 billion, give and take, that should be directed towards our community. this haven't happened in a very, very long time. And this is an opportunity where the lack of action is not connected to the lack of resources. So the reason why I'm bringing this process up is that we have an opportunity to general this process in a different type of way. Now, the other side had $4.5 trillion to play with. So the field is not even, but it's a possibility that we could rag the dog, that at least give us a place at the table that we have a different conversation regarding just transition and the resetting of the energy grid and the energy systems in our country. Because this is all about directing resources to private firms, to hydrogen this, to carbon capture this, to ammonia this, to nuclear power plant this. This is our reality. And this, what I would say in the next 5, 10 years, is the make and break of how we're going to manage this process. So everywhere around the country will face this issue. Not some, everywhere. And locally, if we can't organize around these issues, it may be hydrogen in one place, carbon in another place, ammonia another way, purple unicorns over here, because they just gonna make stuff up to get access to this money. And this is the first of the money, this $4.6 trillion. Now, in closing, Janet Yellen, the Secretary of Treasury, said that over the next 25 years, we're going to need like $75 trillion invested to deal with climate issues. $75 trillion don't exist. It's like that, you know, that, like making up numbers. She just said it's going to take a lot of money. They wildin'. Come on, $75 trillion. That means that our communities will bear the burden of this process. Yeah. I will put my word on it and my life on it that our communities will carry the burden of what they call cleaner energy systems. That's it. So we don't have the, we may not, but we don't have the excuse not to be prepared. They told you. Now, last time I checked, in closing, Janet Yellen is not a radical leftist. Maybe she snuck in, but I doubt it. So when she says 75, and you could Google it, it's on Reuters, another radical publication, that when she said $75 trillion, that base Goldman Sachs was like, yo, we gotta figure this out. JP Morgan like, yo, this about to be bad, like, we can't sustain this anymore. Like, their system is coming around to what we were saying for the last 30, 40 years. That's just the reality. Man, and they don't give a about us, because they still looking at shareholder economics. They want to maximize their profit. So that is the economics that we are dealing with. We ain't dealing with millions of dollars anymore. We're not dealing with billions of dollars anymore. We are dealing with this mysticism of wealth that doesn't exist in the natural world. And we should be very concerned about that. It's not the dollar amount, it's the people amount. It's the impacted people, and the impacted people will be our communities. So this is a call to arms to mentally prepare. Because when they say, oh, Dwayne, here's $50 million, you'd be like, word? That sounds good. You give me 50? Oh, you'll give me another 20 million? Oh, I'm balling. Cool. But all those energy companies are dealing with billions hundreds of billions, if not trillions, over the next 20 years. These millions of dollars will mean very less, except for the fact that we could organize locally. And again, what I always said, verify, critique, don't accept anything in face value. But this is what is being reported openly. It's not what they're saying quietly. So thank you.
Well, I'm just gonna speak a little broadly about the question you asked, Mateo. One of the things we asked of CJE member groups is what kind of scale do funders ask you for, right? And an overwhelming majority of funders ask grassroots groups about scaling out. But in terms of replication and just thinking about greater numbers, right? But EJ leaders that we spoke to said they're not interested in being McDonald's. They're not interested in the franchise model, right? They're interested in what you talked about, those, multiple autonomous groups working in alignment, working on shared values and shared ideas. And one of the things they also spoke to was working on a shared target, right? Let's start working on a shared target. So, an example of that is like the coalitions and alliances that worked to stop Chevron from, creating another facility in California, that was successful. And so, my research is part of the Just Returns Project, a series of research with NCRP, sorry, that is a long acronym, and Climate Justice Alliance, National Committee for Responsive Philanthropy. Did I get it? Yes. Woo! Okay. And the first of this research series, our research is not going to come out for another couple of months, but the first of this research series is how to make your investments in climate justice aligned. And it looked at the top 50 climate funders and where they're putting their dollars, their endowment dollars and investments. And it found that a majority of those investments are going to the dirty dozen, the top 12 polluters in the world, right? So what does that look like for scaling out for multiple autonomous groups working in coalition with each other? It means going after the dirty dozen, right? So we have to, and funders need to stop investing in the dirty dozen. So these are the things that I think can be aggregated and scaled up and scaled out, and we need to stop thinking about scale as a form of replication only.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm about to turn it to questions from our audience members. Shaheen, were you wanting to jump in on this one before?
No, I mean,
Yeah?
Jennifer
Okay.
said it well.
Great. So we have a mic over there, and I think we may have, folks who are going to move it around. So why don't we take a handful of questions? We'll hear, maybe 3 and aggregate them, and then we'll ask our panelists to speak to them. So folks who are in the room who would like to hear more on any part of this, please feel free to jump in now.
Don't be shy. I know you have lurking curiosities. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Bianca Lopez. I am from the Central Valley in California. I'm here to network and collaborate with folks. Oh my goodness. I have a question. I'm really excited about all you're saying because that's what we're doing in our communities, are trying to make sure that it is the community who are doing these jobs that are most affected about climate change. And you all just provided a whole lot of solutions of what community empowerment looks like to be able to transition.
And I think being able to pay community members an equitable wage, make sure they have insurance, make sure that they have a pension of some sort when they retire, right? So we have to take care of these people that are taking care of their own land. I'm wondering if you have any, as a community here, I don't know who's in the room, right, talking about organizing. I think that maybe we should pass the mic. No, I'm just kidding. But we should be networking, right? Have you, as a coalition maybe, or an alliance, have set positions for, this is what we're saying no to, right? Like the common goals, no incineration, no hydrogen, like for the fall solutions. And my other question is, why are we asking philanthropy to pay for these things if it's the companies and industry who are doing and causing these things, and we should take their money to be able to shut them down and take their money? So I'm just wondering, like, how do we do that? And are the philanthropists, I don't know, philanthropists, PPs, are they also the polluters? And is it okay to take polluter money?
Hello. My name's Micah Pryor, and I'm work at a consulting firm with Jackie Daniel here. Their organization works in East St. Louis, and we recently have worked to get some money through the IRA and through some state funding to build a workforce development hub for clean energy jobs in the East St. Louis region. My question is, as we are working to band with other local community organizations to bring in the state and federal money, what recommendations and, I guess, wisdom do you have to safeguard yourself, right? Because you said that the community organizations are going to bear the burden of doing this work. And so one thing that I think about is like the economic and just kind of the target that gets put on, you know, smaller organizations when they receive this money. So any insight or wisdom to protect the organizations and keep the work kind of, you know, keep the people safe in receiving this type of money?
Great. Let's start with these two questions since they're both really rich and nuanced, and then we'll take more questions.
So you was talking about blood money.
Both of them.
And I'm just being real. It's like all of this is blood money, and I'm very upfront about what this is. Philanthropy is connected to the stock market. Some, oh, we green. No, it's not. They trying to get that margins, and they you know what I mean? It's so I respect people that say like, oh, I don't want to take that money. And I'm just saying that's our money anyway. That's what basically, and trying to do our best to move forward is, and some people are, well, you just want the money. No, I'm just being real. Like, between indigenous, slavery, and everything else, colonialism, where's the clean aspect of greenbacks in the American empire? There's very few things that's clean. I just want to be sincere on who, be transparent, and not be controlled. Now, if people give you resources and say, well, you can't say this, then you gotta be like, yeah, I take it, I'm gonna say it anyway. But what you gonna do? It's spent. but I'm just saying, most of our communities, or many of our communities are poor. And I have to be practical, like I could be like, no, but I'm still getting my paycheck. But can I serve the community in which I'm supposed to serve? So that's something that platforms, organizations, and I respect folks, how they make the decisions, but it's late in this game to, you know what I mean? If not, it's leave the 501c3 and just be raw and just kind of like work that job and volunteer. Outside of that, this 501c3 is what it is. This is the hustle. Now, relative to that federal money, You pray. Fast, prayer, because depending who's in power, they will come at you in multiple different ways. And crossing that T's, dotting those I's, making sure your accounting systems are tight and your compliance to the regulatory system and making that transparent and connect yourself to your federal delegation, and you still may be a target. That is the reality of taking federal money. This is the reality. When I walk through that door, and if something happened as I come out, I can't be like, "Dag, I ain't know. Oh shoot, no. This is what they said in Godfather. This is the business we choose." I know, so I'm not going to try to front it off. There's a strong possibility, and they started already. I'm going to leave it as that they're going to press you. And you just got to have systems to press back, right? And I don't know. We're going to have to learn from each other. We got to set up like early warning systems, like, yo, we getting pressed over here. Word, you messing with my boy, yo, back up. Right? No, I'm being real. Because they will come at us. So, no, that's not any easy answer. And I always say, when you need help, find the help. Don't suffer silently. But no, this is something that we have to share, and it's one of the good things about CJA and platforms, that I believe that our platforms, and particularly CJA, we could kind of share information. How do we manage this process? This is highly politicized. We go to fight capital eventually, and this is what the outcome is. They're going to come back at us. So that's my analysis.
I'm just gonna plug another report nobody's gonna read. So for the last 2 years, I've been following the Communities First Fund that has been instrumental in getting a lot of community-based groups, coalitions, federal funding through the IRA funding. And their work has been amazing, cross-sector facilitation, inside-outside tactics, working with federal agencies behind the scenes, working with community-based groups. And one of the things that they have told community groups and coalitions and everything is this, and Dwayne just said it so eloquently, is this is our money. This is the money we advocated for. This is the money that we've been working toward for decades and decades and organizing for. And so if we don't take it now, we might not get that opportunity again, right? So it is, sometimes you don't realize what it entails, and it is a lot of work to manage federal grants and apply for this kind of funding. And so my recommendation based, on your question is just like have a lot of great partners, people you trust, to work and share some of that capacity, share some of the burden and load of all that it entails to manage this money, because they will scrutinize it once you get it. And then to the question on, why philanthropy, why funding? Well, this is going to be a little controversial for the funders in the room, but that's our money too, right? Because that's money that wasn't taxed and built wealth out of extractive systems. And so we deserve that money too, right? Well, and I say we, I mean the collective environmental justice movement and all of the great groups that are on the ground doing that. That's their money too. So it should be, it's something that we should absolutely be demanding from funders, and we should be demanding accountability from the kind of grant making and investments they're making. And we should also be pushing them to redefine, again, the ways they think about evaluating programs and climate action, the ways they think about scale, and the ways in which they're in relationship with grassroots groups as well. They have to build those relationships up. So.
If I could throw out two quick details on your first question in particular, I believe there are folks in the room from Communities for a Better Environment, from the California Environmental Justice Alliance, and they recently went after Chevron directly in the city of Richmond, California, and out of that got a $550 million settlement, if I'm not mistaken. So I think they're a great resource to talk to about, like, how do we go at the polluters directly and use political muscle toward that end. And then also to the question around dignified livelihoods and to this question of aggregating scale, we as social movements are in the process and have built institutions, and I'll name one, which is called the Seed Commons, which is actually an aggregation of, at this point, dozens and dozens of community-led loan funds that are now controlling hundreds of millions of dollars towards building circular economies. As in, we've aggregated the risk. Usually the risk is on us. Lenders say, like, you don't make a profit, you still gotta give us everything back, including whatever you own. And here it's the opposite. We've created loan funds, and we've created a system through which we support community-led initiatives to build worker-owned cooperatives, for example. And loss is aggregated. It's not on the backs of those who built it. And it's all about, how do we get you to a yes? How do we get you to success? And that in turn, so we have that infrastructure in place. So that can be easily replicated in many places. If you want to learn more about that, happy to talk to you about that or direct you to the right folk. And that leads us to then, I think, to what Jennifer just so eloquently put. We've also built a lot of muscle and infrastructure around getting philanthropy to commit to returning the capital to the commons. And there is actually a growing critical mass within philanthropy that is with us and is saying, yes, this money isn't ours. And that's, for example, how we built some of that seed capital in the seed commons. So this is part of our political initiative too. So, like, this is not your money to give away. This is money you need to return. And I remember about 2 years ago talking to a program officer in philanthropy, and she literally said, yeah, I've been telling my ID, they're coming for you. So you better get with this program because they're coming for you. And that was so encouraging to hear that within the infrastructure, folks feel that heat because it makes sense. Because as soon as good sense becomes common sense, the tables shift, and that's what we're working towards. So I think we have time for, can we do a few more questions or? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, let's get
Only one question. One question and then we party.
Hey, good evening. My name is Daniel. So we've talked about sort of money distribution. We've talked about thinking about scale. One thing that, as organizers, we often think about is state power and their monopoly over violence and how that has historically and continues to enable dispossession in our communities. Whereas at the same time, we're trying to appeal to state and state power for protection or remediation. Just generally, what do you think of how organizers should think about state institutions and power as a larger entity when we sometimes have to have simultaneous contradictory relationship with state and state institutions?
Yeah, we have one hand there.
Hello, my name is Puneet Singh. I'm pondering the marbles, and I'm just wondering if you could internationalize this conversation, and I'm wondering what the international links look like here, because I feel like obviously organizing has been happening for decades, but I think a lot of the conversation tonight specifically has been revolving around this like release of capital, but that's happening because we're in the United States. And I'm thinking about frontline communities like, you know, the Amazonas are on fire, you know, Pakistan was, a third of Pakistan was flooded due to glacial outbursts, and last year, the same thing happened to Bangladesh like 6 weeks ago. So I'm wondering, what do we have marbles here, obviously. How are these marbles engaging with the marbles over there?
I'll be asking easy questions, right? Nah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. In the back, like, dealing with police as a person that had to deal with police before smartphones and the documentation that you have now, nothing has changed. But very few things change. You still have to engage the system, realizing that anytime violence will be used by the state. It's something that, since I was a young boy, it's just the realities, our father's realities, our grandfather's realities, but you still engage. You engage on all level, legally, community, neighborhood, organize, make the process internally as transparent as possible, and pray for the best. That's a great question. I don't have the answer. As being a larger size Black man, I'm very conscious how I walk around, even NYC, in particular NYC. Oh my Lord, NYC, right? So that's a legitimate question, but collectively, we may have a piece of the answer, but violence will always be tools of the state, and they will implement that. Now, the Southern, however we want to call it, Southern, or less developed, my people's from Jamaica, right? And the reality is that what happens there will happen here. It's no division in that. The few marbles that we have will be taken away as when they want to take away. Whether it was fracking or extraction in this country, the reality is very blurred. I don't have that answer. I don't know, I'm being sincere. Communication, organized, I don't know. That's a good one. I just think that it's just, I'm just speaking from where my peeps are from in Jamaica. The bad thing when I went back there, I could not unsee the environmental impacts everywhere I went around the island. I wish I didn't see it. I wish I wasn't in this field, but that's a concrete plant. Oh my, that's and then you type it up, you hear all these health consequences right by the airport in Jamaica. So this is the problem set that we're going to have to deal with. Inshallah, I pray that we up to it. But this is something that, alhamdulillah.
Is it okay if I jump in? Thank you for asking that. I think one of the key continuum messages that I hear from our comrades in the Global South is continually asking us in the US context, where is your land reform movement? How are you organizing to reclaim full democratic control of land and capital in your context? That's the biggest contribution you can make to our struggles in our home. So that's how I understand the marbles question, which is that one way of thinking about it is the religion, the theocracy of private property as the pathway to individual success is in many ways the disease that holds empire together. So our social movement efforts in this context in the US is about reclaiming full democratic control of land, and that may look different from the landless workers movement, the MST in Brazil, that operates in a rural context, but they also do it in an urban context. And our task is to figure out what the urban and rural expressions of that are in the United States. I believe a lot of our efforts are headed in that direction, be it through the frame of remediation or land back or reparations. But I'm very thankful that you raised that question, because we tend to give into exceptionalism even when we're not aware that that's what we're doing in a US context. So to really frame our efforts in relationship to dismantling empire is a central part of what we're building. Climate justice necessitates the end of empire. Without the end of empire, there isn't climate justice, if I'm hearing your question correctly. Yeah. So thank you for asking that. Any parting thoughts that folks want to put on the table? Otherwise, this is not an end. No. This is a pause on a continual conversation and evolution and iteration of the movement muscle that we're all continually building together. And please, let's give it up for the Tishman Center for hosting this amazing conversation. And in the spirit of celebration, as we pivot to celebrating tonight, also want to remind folks that Uprose, one of the proud members of the Climate Justice Alliance in Brooklyn, is hosting a Climate Justice Festival this coming Saturday. I believe it starts at 2 p.m. Easy to find online. Amazing lineup of artists and many, many expressions of beauty in the context of climate justice struggle. So please join us there Saturday as well. But I'll turn it over to Anna to close us out.
Everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you to our panelists. And now let's hear it for them. And I think now we're just gonna continue our conversation in the room together and build community here together. So I invite you all to stay, meet each other, take what's left of the snacks, and hang out a little bit together, all right? Thank you, everyone.
Todo muy bien. La verdad que estamos súper agradecidos y lo tengo que poner por escrito porque han hecho un trabajo espectacular.